Rink-wide Chef Paterson is our Canucks reporter. He took in the defeat to the Washington Capitals on Saturday and has penned for Canucks Army. Tocchet's tone changes in wake of consecutive letdown losses for the Canucks. He joins us now. Hi, Jeff.
Hello, guys.
Yeah, we heard Coach Tocchet earlier in the show talking about urgency and manufacturing urgency, and he can't manufacture urgency for these guys. Jeff, tell us about your column.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the quote that really jumped out at me post-game was that he was asked about how do you go about getting your guys to, when momentum is slipping away or the game is sort of spinning its wheels, how do you get that intensity? And he said, if I have to manufacture that, we're in trouble. There's 14 games to go, guys. Like, come playoff time, they're going to be down in hockey games. They're going to be trailing going to the third period. Like, it just feels like the Colorado game and this game against Washington, there was a slight shift in his tone. And there were a couple other quotes, the break the seal thing, where he talked about, guys just have to figure out that there is more there. Whether they believe it or not, they've got to dig deeper. And I don't know, I just listening to him in the aftermath, and I went back again on Sunday and listened to it again just to make sure that I, wasn't mishearing it in the moments after the game. And he sounds like a guy that is sounding the alarm a little bit here with a month to go before the playoffs, that he has sensed that, and it's not just these two games. And I wrote about this. In fact, it was the lead of the column. They've lost more than they've won since the All-Star break. Like, I don't know if people recognize that, but they're 9-7-3, but that's 9 wins and 10 losses. And that's not a formidable foe for anybody in the playoffs. If they limp into the playoffs basically 500 over their final 35 or 40 games, they're going to be a playoff team. And at the outset of the season, I think that was the bar. But I've also seen a number of people on social saying, oh, there were no expectations on this group. Like, let's just see how it goes. No, I think expectations change over the season. A team doesn't make the Nikita Zadorov deal. They don't make the Elias Lindholm trade if they as an organization don't believe that what they've accomplished is going to allow them to at least believe they can make some noise come playoff time. So I think the coach has just sensed that, you look at the 2 goals the other night against Washington, guys, the staples, like, it's kind of become a punchline. I get that. But I mean, Rick Tocchet believes in those staples, and the Canucks getting away from them. Both of them just, bad defensive turnovers that lead to goals for the other team, not taking out guys in front of the net, not taking the middle of the ice, board battles, all those types of things. And one of the other comments that Tocchet made that I thought was really interesting was, he said he felt like guys were just standing around waiting for somebody else to do the job. And if you watch that game start to finish on Saturday night, I would agree with him 100% that they just didn't look like a team that was totally invested in making the things necessary to get the result. And as a result, they didn't. I mean, they end up losing, and that's back-to-back losses. They got a single point against Colorado. But yeah, if that was the bounce-back game against Washington on Saturday, then not much of a bounce-back at all.
JT Miller's got bottom line, so he escapes a lot of criticism, and he just passes a lot of the eye test, stuff as well. Not so for Elias and Elias, who don't have much of a bottom line lately, and also their eye tests are a little bit more difficult to pin down on. It's there if you're told what to look for, but for the casual fan that's just looking for noise, they're not going to see a lot of it from those 2 particular guys. So per the Tim Hortons poll question, is there one guy that draws a little more ire than the other in your eyes, or are they about even?
Yeah, I mean, the easy way out would be to say both, but we know what Elias Pettersson means to this hockey club, and it's just not there for him right now. And that's not to say that it won't be there come playoff time. Like, he performed in the bubble, and I think that's what has to give people hope, is that when the chips are truly down, that he will be able to elevate his game. But yeah, I mean, really since the All-Star break, there just hasn't been a lot of there. That there have been a couple of nights. The big nights have been few and far between. And the big nights, I think he has 2 3-point nights, both of them against Detroit, if I'm not mistaken. And those have padded his stats. But if you take those nights out, it doesn't leave an awful lot there. So I just want to leave the building on some of these nights here down the stretch thinking, like, okay, even if he doesn't score, like, some of that PD magic, some of the, there are memorable plays that give me an indication that he's taking over games and situations, and we just haven't seen that. Elias Lindholm, yeah, offensively, massive disappointment so far. Again, they didn't get him necessarily to be a difference maker in March. I mean, the proof will be in the pudding come playoff time. I think the other thing, too, for Lindholm is maybe we gauge him too much against his best NHL season or seasons. He's had 2 high-scoring seasons in Calgary. Otherwise, if you look at his numbers, he's essentially a sort of 50-point guy that can help you in other areas. And that's probably a truer gauge of who he ultimately is. So, there's penalty killing utility. There are faceoffs, and he's been really good on faceoffs, but they didn't pay the package that they did to get a guy that can win them occasional faceoffs. Like, that's value added. They need more from him. There's no doubt. And this idea that everybody's just waiting for Dakota Joshua to come back. And I'm waiting for Dakota Joshua. Like, I want to see Dakota Joshua back in their lineup. They're a better team with him. But if the absence of one middle six winger means this much to this team, like, look around the NHL. Winnipeg was without Kyle Connor for a month. Like, they survived that. Florida started the season without its top 2 defensemen, and look at the Panthers now. The Rangers missed Adam Fox for a while. Philip Hedl has been shut down for, like, other teams deal with this. And so this notion that one guy coming back is somehow the magic potion for the Vancouver Canucks, again, he's going to help, and he'll allow them to, level out their lineup and move some other guys around. But I don't know. It just sort of feels, too, like maybe some guys are waiting for that day when Dakota Joshua gets back. It's 5 weeks now. The injury happened in Chicago. It's 5 weeks ago, and there's been no sign of him at practice recently. So I think this is going to turn out to be every bit of the 4 to 6 weeks, and 4 has sailed. So I think we're looking at a 6-week injury for Dakota Joshua.
Yeah, February 13th it happened. The team is 6-6-2 in his absence. Jeff, is it also becoming painfully obvious that pursuit of a winger in advance of the NHL trade deadline was needed for these Vancouver Canucks?
Yeah, I think so. I think every time that this team goes out, and again on the power play too, that's another, like, just 5-on-5. Would you like a scoring winger for Elias Pettersson? Sure, and I'm sure he would as well. But trade deadline's come and gone, and so what you see is what you get in terms of where they're going to find the solutions. It's going to have to come internally. I do think at some point you're going to see Lindholm elevated again. I can't imagine that experiment is done. And I'm a little surprised, quite frankly, with the power play spinning its wheels. A third period power play against Colorado the other night at 3-3, nothing. A power play, the only power play in a 2-1 game in the third period the other night, nothing. And it's not a knock on Connor Garland, but I spent Friday out at UBC trying to ask both the coach and Garland, what exactly is his role on that first unit? And I get that they've thrown a bunch of stuff against the wall here, but guys, the power play is 29th in the NHL since the All-Star break. Like, that should be red flag city for the Vancouver Canucks, and it is something that they're going to have to sort out here, because I don't want to see them limp into the playoffs with a power play that's running at about 15%. So I would swap Garland and put Lindholm back there and just tell them to figure it out. Like, just whatever it takes. Like, did they get a couple of looks the other night against Washington? Pettersson had that chance. But, Blake, how many times have we done this, right? I don't want to talk about chances in a 2-1 loss. I want to see pucks go in the net for the Vancouver Canucks. And it just kind of feels like, if that's the takeaway, that there was one chance on a power play in the third period, not good enough. Not good enough for the Vancouver Canucks. So, yes, they're down more than an entire goal from the midway mark of the season. So the first half to the second half, they are down more than a full goal per game. And so much of that is a power play that scored just 8 times in 19 games since that All-Star break.
And never, when they were high flying, did I think we would be trotting out the old trope that we dealt with for years on this program. Winners talk about goals. Losers talk about chances.
Yeah, I just don't understand, Jeff, and you can correct me if you've seen it over a long stretch, but I don't know why they don't reset. Why don't they go back to December, turn the clock back to the lines and the power play that they had in December, with or without Lindholm? I mean, if you don't put Lindholm on the second unit and just go full reset to what you had in December, I'm game for that. You can't do it fully until Joshua is back. But certainly when Joshua is back, like, elevate Lindholm, reset the lineup. And we saw a little bit on the, I'm losing track if it was the late power play, the third period power play, in which game, in which you saw, again, Miller back to the left of Hughes again and skating downhill with the puck. But, it worked. Why don't you just go back to, why did they try to fix something that wasn't really that broken?
Right. So the one power play the other night against Capitals, yes, and they had Pia Suter out there, so they went with a left-hander, and we've seen that again. This sort of counts among the various looks that they have shown here in the last 6 weeks or so. I guess the obvious answer to your question is Blake Kuzmenko's not here, and we know his struggles, but he was part of that first unit power play for much of the season, and even if he didn't figure in the scoring, he was still part of a unit that had some success. But I'm with you. They were a better team in the first half of the season. There's no question. And so at some point here, you'd think that Rick Tocchet would say, yeah, hey, what was working back then? Why don't we give some of that a shot? He had a full-throated answer the other day after one of the practices last week where somebody said, why not lotto line? It worked for you in January. You guys ran roughshod on the league for a couple of weeks. And he said, lotto line's not the secret sauce here. He said that other guys have to figure it out on their own. We've seen him go to lotto line late in hockey games here when they've been trailing. And yeah, it hasn't been able to produce the goal that they're looking for. But I do think that there's some application for giving Elias Pettersson some elite level players to play with, because the guys that he's playing with have been quiet. Now, Hoaglander's had a nice season. I get that. But whoever else is on his wing, Pia Suter's only goal since the All-Star break was the 5th goal in a 5-0 win against Winnipeg. That's not exactly, nailing it in crunch time. And this isn't a knock on Pia Suter. I think there's a place for him in this lineup. I think he's been a good player at his price point, but he wasn't signed to be Elias Pettersson's wingman and certainly play in the top 6. So, they tried Lafferty there the other night. I thought it was interesting in a game where the Canucks were scuffling along and there wasn't much happening. And the coach said afterwards, low event game, but it really felt like they spent a good portion of the second period trying to find something that was going to get the most out of Elias Pettersson. He played with Garland and Lindholm for a shift. He had Lafferty on his line. They were moving pieces around, but still nothing there. I have to say, I quite frankly, I was surprised at the end of the night when I looked at the stat sheet, and Pettersson had 9 shot attempts. It did not feel like he had the puck on his stick that much. Outside of that power play chance, I can't recall anything that really stuck out to me as a really good look for him or from him. So it's a concern. It's gone on too long now. And when you think of the goals that they have scored and the fact that you can rattle them off the top of your head, it sort of underscores the point here. But, Brock Besser scores the other night. Before that, Miller opened the scoring, and Mikheyev in the first couple of minutes against Colorado. Really, they have one line that is producing. And I don't know. I wrote about that in the column too. If you think you can go to the playoffs and make some noise as a one-line team with a pop gun power play, I would suggest that they got something else coming. So again, 14 games. There's still time here to iron some of this out. But yeah, I'm curious to see what practice looks like here as they get back to work after a day off the ice on Sunday, because I do think you've got a coach that is starting to sense some issues with his hockey club.
Tyler Myers returned. I'd like your thoughts on that and the way they've now structured the defense. And Jeff, is this their best 6? Is this how they want to line it up on night 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, with Susie beside Myers and Cole and Zadorov with Nikita playing the right side?
Yeah, look, they gave up 2 goals. So I think defensively they were fine the other night. The issue was that they couldn't generate enough offense. But Tyler Myers, after missing 5 games, gets back in there. He and Susie played well when Susie was back for the brief time in January. And yeah, I think this is their top 6. And the coach mentioned again that, it felt bad for Noah Juulsen because Juulsen's played well, but Noah Juulsen is a depth defender. When everybody else is healthy, he's their 7th guy, and he's going to have to live with that. And I'm not sure that everybody's going to stay healthy. Now, I do expect that we will see some load management here over the remainder of the home stretch, or the home stand rather, but no back-to-back. So these will all be coaches' decisions, and we'll see how it goes. And Ian Cole would seem like the most likely candidate at some point to sit down here. But, how did they play defensively in a game where not much was happening and every error had the potential to be costly? Look at the goals. A lot was made about the icing call, and the linesman blew it. Let's be honest, that was a bad mistake by a veteran linesman. Phil DiGiuseppe was winning that race, would have been the first to the puck. The Canucks got hosed on that call. But it comes back to my point that they're going to face some adversity in the playoffs. So it meant a face-off in their own zone. But Teddy Bluger wins that draw cleanly. And that's when the trouble starts. Ian Cole fires around the boards, and there was nobody there. And so, Rick Tocchet talking about his board battles. those staples. And then the second goal, Phil Hronek, and now he's in the spotlight, obviously, with his contract. The high flip, but he doesn't get it out of the zone, and the Capitals keep it in. Like, he had full possession of the puck. So the Canucks were in possession of the puck on both of the Washington goals. They've got to do a better job of breaking that puck out. So I thought Tyler Myers was fine. Like, the guys that made the mistakes the other day, and he's had his nights where he has made some miscues, but I think they're happy to have him back, and he was all right. And, again, it wasn't about defense the other night, because I thought DeSmith was fine too. This is a team that they knew what they were getting in, a Washington team that needs every point. I don't even know that the Capitals were all that desperate, guys. It was just that they were allowed to play their game, and the Canucks have to find a way to break through. And for all this talk about rest and recovery and the home stand in the month of March, they've scored 1 third-period goal in the 3 games on the homestand. They've come out of the gates, lights out, like house on fire.
The first period's been amazing.
They've opened the scoring in the first 2 minutes of all 3 of these games. And I don't know if that makes, maybe they think it's going to be easy. If you're, hey, first one's going in, it's going to be our night. They padded the lead against Winnipeg. They did it again against Colorado to get to 3-0. But since that 3-0 lead against the Avs, Canucks have been outscored 6-1 on home ice and don't have a third-period goal in either of these last 2 games against, Colorado had played the night before, and Washington was playing 3-4 and was a long way from home. So, I would say that with 1 win in the first 3 games, 3 points out of these first 3 games, this homestand has not exactly gone according to.
But that's where this standard is raised, right? Is, this team is 4-1-1 in the last 6 games. They have allowed more than 2 goals in one of these games, and yet I think everybody feels a little bit uneasy. Like, you would sign up every day, every time for a 6-game span in which one of those games you allow more than 2 goals, and yet it just doesn't feel very good right now for the Canucks.
Yeah, and really outside of the third period against Colorado, they've played all right and certainly played well defensively on the homestand, and that was the key to the success out on the road trip, right? I mean, it wasn't that they exploded for a ton of offense. They had 2 2-1 wins and a 3-1. They got that third goal like bonanza in Vegas, but it was holding their opponents to a single goal, and then they come home and they shut out Winnipeg. And so, a week ago when I was with you guys, it felt like they had turned a corner. It felt like rest and recovery was certainly playing into their advantage. And then look out, they've got all of these games remaining on the homestand. But some lessons to be learned about, first sign of adversity, the late second period goal against Colorado, the botched icing call. Like, that can't derail a good hockey club. It can't. And it did seem to be cause and effect there. I mean, the icing call, and 2 minutes later, a 1-0 lead is gone, and they're down 2-1. And then the Capitals were able to sort of establish the way that they wanted to play the rest of the game and make the Canucks, dig and fight for every bit of ice. And that was what Tocchet said post-game as well. The guys just weren't, really hammered down on the fact that the Canucks spent way too much against the Capitals on the outside. And I would agree with them. It was a lot of perimeter play. Nobody seemed to want to get to the inside. And the other thing the coach mentioned, guys, and I don't think this has been the case on a lot of nights for the Vancouver Canucks because they've scored a ton of goals all season, but 48 shot attempts that either missed the net or were blocked. And it's funny because you mentioned JT Miller, and he does get off the hook just because of his production, but I thought he was sort of the poster boy for that the other night. In the second period, shorthanded chance, comes down the right side and fired it 5 feet high. It wasn't even close. And then there was another chance in the third period where, make the goalie. I'm a big believer in making goalies make saves, right? Maybe you score, maybe there's a rebound, maybe it's tipped, whatever. But if you're putting it 5 feet off the net, that's not really helping the cause an awful lot. And so the Canucks did way too much of that the other night, and that seemed to be sticking with the coach in the post game, and even yesterday after he did his media availability.
But Jeff, shots on goal have been a problem all year. Even when they were leading the league, they were way down the shots on goal. Statistics, 28.3 shots per night. That is 27th in the National Hockey League. And there is not a playoff team anywhere near that orbit. I do wonder whether some of this has come up, that if you're going to be as low as the Vancouver Canucks have been, shots on goal all season long, anticipate that goals per game is going to sag a little bit over 82 because you're just not putting enough pucks on net.
Yeah, I think early in the season, and it kind of goes hand in hand with why all these guys had the high shooting percentage, right? They weren't wasting a lot of shots. They wasted some shots the other night on their own accord, though. When you're missing the target that much, just got to recalibrate a little bit and make sure that you're honing in on that target. The target's not moving; it's where it always is. So just have to do a better job. But I think also, as they prepare for the final 14 games and then what's beyond, everything does now have to be viewed through this playoff prism that we've talked about. And more teams are going to be willing to block shots, right? You're going to see that guys are prepared to pay more of a price. And the Washington Capitals, if that, maybe that was an area where they showed some desperation the other night, because the Capitals need every point available to them. They eked out a 2-1 win in Seattle. They come to Vancouver and they repeat the trick. And so, they get a couple of wins there. But even going back to the game against Edmonton where they got shelled, they don't score much, right? They've scored 2 in their last 3 games. And so Capitals are trying to find ways to win 2-1 hockey games. The Canucks have enough offensive firepower. Even if the power play is sputtering along, they should have enough firepower to, get a second goal, get it to overtime, take your chances there, whatever. Missed opportunity for the Vancouver Canucks. Now, they've done so much heavy lifting early in the season that they still lead the division by 8. It kind of feels like they're going to get passed here by any of those 3 teams that are charging in the Central Division. I think Colorado's won 7 straight now since the trade deadline and, the late second win the other night against Edmonton. So, to me, it's not about holding down top spot in the league or even in the conference, because home ice in the if they get to the third round of the playoffs this season has been a massive success for the Vancouver Canucks. But I do think that, they've opened the door a little here for the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers are 8 back, 3 in hand, with 1 game left head-to-head. I don't think that this Pacific Division is sealed yet for the Vancouver Canucks. Now, again, you've got 6 remaining on the homestand. That should play into your hands. You got a Buffalo team that's coming in here after playing in Seattle tonight. So, another team that's tired, playing back-to-back. We'll see if the Canucks can make something out of that one. But that, to me, would be troubling. If at the tail end here, the Edmonton Oilers are able to reel in the Vancouver Canucks after the massive lead the Canucks had opened on the Oilers, the early season struggles of the Oilers. I do think just optically it's pretty important for the Vancouver Canucks to maintain top spot in the Pacific Division.
Just crunching some numbers from both points that you both made. The Canucks are 27th in shots per game this season, but they're 13th in missed shots this season.
All right, then.
So they don't take many shots. And then they miss far too many
on average
of the ones that they do take.
Yeah.
They're not testing the goalie.
Lastly, Jeff, we'll talk to you Friday, but size up the week ahead for us here with the last 2 Eastern Conference teams on the schedule, Buffalo and Montreal coming to town.
Yeah, and the Sabres have had a bit of a resurgence. I think they're 8-4-1 in their last 13 games heading into Seattle. So, again, the schedule doing the Canucks a favor here, but at some point, it's got to be more than the schedule. They've got to do themselves a favor by playing a full 60 minutes. So, another chance to respond against the Sabres. Montreal, I think they recognize now that any sort of playoff hope is over. Martin St. Louis has left the hockey club, so former Canuck Trevor Letowski running the bench in the interim. Alex Burrows obviously there as well. And then you get Calgary, you get Kuzmenko, his return on Saturday night, and the Flames won't go quietly. I think they're running out of real estate here. They're not going to be a playoff team ultimately, but they can give the Canucks a handful. I think they're experimenting with goaltending right now, and we'll see who they've got between the pipes. But this feels like a big week, guys, because those are 3 winnable opponents on paper. You're at home, you're rested, no back-to-backs. Because after that, Los Angeles and Dallas, those aren't going to be easy opponents. So if you break down the 9-game homestand into 3-game segments, the first one included Winnipeg and Colorado. That wasn't going to be easy. There are no easy games in the NHL, but I just think on paper, this looks like a week for the Vancouver Canucks to make some hay, as long as they get back to the structure, the staples, the wall work, the board battles, and all those things that Rick Tocchet is imploring them to do that they've kind of got away from here in the last couple of years.
Right, and put the puck on net. Don't miss.
Yes.
Great stuff, Jeff. Thank you for this. We'll catch up later in the week.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.